Your heart's racing, your hands are shaking. You're trying to get through what you have to say as quickly as possible just to get it done. The wild part is that you're a leader in that room. You already have a title and you already have a seat on the table. So why does your body still feel like you don't? Here's what nobody tells you. You can know exactly where that lack of confidence, that feeling of not belonging, or that nervous system dysregulation comes from. You can know the story. You can reframe it 1,000 times. And you can try to talk yourself out of it. But the next day in that meeting, the exact same thing happens. Damn it. You know what's the hardest part about filming at home lately is I try to do it late at night or really early in the morning, but my baby wakes up. And so I have to keep going back and forth, back and forth. I'm going to start probably figuring out how to do these outside of the house. Anyways, here's what nobody tells you. You can know exactly where the pattern comes from, where your emotional dysregulation is coming from, where that behavioral pattern that's impacting your career is coming from. You can know the story and you can try to reframe your story so that you can do better next time. And yet, the simple act of reframing your story or using words doesn't stop you from walking into that meeting the next day and the same thing happening to you again. Why? Because the pattern isn't living in your brain or in your mind. It's living in your body. I can hear him fussing. I'm not going to get through this video, am I? The author of The Body Keeps Score, I think his name is Bessel van der Kolk or Vanderkolk, something like that. He spent his entire career studying how experiences leave an imprint, not just on your mind, not just on your brain, but on your body. And that imprint has ongoing consequences for how you move in the world, how you survive through the present. In a similar fashion, I can see that experiences that were significant enough to leave an imprint can and do show up as behavioral patterns or nervous system patterns in our adult lives that can influence our careers as well. Now, I want to be clear. What I'm talking about doesn't have to be trauma in the clinical sense. It doesn't have to be something catastrophic. It just has to be a strong enough experience that shaped you as a person or shaped a small part of you as a person. For me, for example, when I concentrate on the behavioral pattern of being afraid to speak up in meetings and presentations and how dysregulated my nervous system becomes during those moments, I can see it from two places. The first was being thrown into a school where I didn't know the language and I didn't know the culture. It made me learn very quickly that I didn't belong, that I was an outsider, and that I potentially was taking up space that was someone else's. So very quickly, I learned to disappear, to not make noise, to not speak up, to not take up space that didn't belong to me. The second was growing up in a home where speaking your mind or having a different opinion was dangerous. I had a parent who was very explosive. And anytime I either didn't disagree or had a different opinion or, I had a thought of my own, they would explode. They would yell. And so I learned very quickly that speaking up was dangerous because as soon as I said anything that created an imbalance, my parent would explode and the rest of the day was ruined. So I stayed quiet. Eventually, all of that turned into self-doubt. What if what I have to say is wrong? I bet anyone else can say it better than I can. What if I'm the only one that's confused here? So my experiences not only created an imprint in my personality or my character, they also created an imprint in my nervous system, in my body, telling it to feel afraid, to feel like I didn't belong anytime I had a thought to share. So as an adult, as a professional in a leadership career, that manifested itself in a lot of nervous system dysregulation. I became too shy or too nervous to speak up in formal settings. And even when I came across as confident, I knew deep down that I was always faking it. Physically, my hands would literally shake, as would my voice. My cheeks would flush and my heart would race so fast. And every time I actually did get the courage to speak, I rushed through everything I had to say as quickly as possible so it could be over and done with, which usually meant that I couldn't communicate my message effectively. And it kind of displayed a lack of confidence, which in turn was taken as a lack of leadership. And here's where I really want to land on something. A lot of this does not live just in your mind. There is a literal physical manifestation of it all. That's what nervous system dysregulation is. And where I think that experiences that were significant enough to impact our personality, our character, even our identity, they also have the power to change how we think, to change the way our mind and brain think and what we think about, our perspective, basically how you think of yourself. So that's why when you want to change a behavioral pattern, it's not enough to just say that you want to change it and then change it. Words are meaningful, but they're not enough. You know, I could tell myself my story that I felt like I didn't belong, but actually that wasn't true because I had a lot of friends and I had friends who were genuinely curious about my culture and wanted me to be a part of the group. Or I could try to reframe my story and say, yeah, my upbringing was a little bit toxic. It was kind of dangerous to speak up, but it also taught me how to defend myself. It taught me how to fight back. But just because I used the language to reframe my story doesn't mean that it made it any easier to go back into that room, to go back into that meeting and not feel all that nervous system dysregulation that I was feeling. It didn't make it any easier for me to get the courage to speak up. But once I did, it also didn't make it any easier for me to take my time to explain my points and not rush through things. It didn't make it any easier to stand behind my words with confidence because the act of telling the story doesn't change the automatic physical response. For real change to take place, the body, the nervous system, has to learn a new pattern physically. It has to learn, in my example, that the danger has passed. The body has to learn how to live in the new reality of the present. Literally, your body has to learn how to feel safe in this new pattern. And it's something that you have to almost physically drag your body through in order to prove to it that you're safe. So for example, even though I had moved out of my parents' house and I had created this beautiful apartment that was so peaceful and so serene, and I was away from what my nervous system felt like it was in a little bit of danger, it still didn't change how I showed up as a person, how that fear showed up in me every time I was in a meeting. So how did I get my hands to stop shaking? How can you get your nervous system regulated and stop feeling that physical manifestation of your fears? You have to physically prove to your body that speaking up is no longer dangerous. It is literally a physical act to drag yourself out of those old nervous system reactions. You have to force yourself to experience the thing to prove to your body that it's no longer dangerous. And then you have to allow your body to feel. For example, for me, I had to force myself constantly, painfully, through a lot of fear to speak up incrementally, little by little. And every single time it was a piece of evidence to my body that it was safe because no one yelled at me when I spoke up. No one made me feel like I didn't belong at the table. Yeah, maybe I messed up sometimes. Maybe I was wrong sometimes. But guess what? Even in those moments, I was safe. You have to do it in small increments. That's how you build the knowing. That's how you allow your body to slowly feel safe. And then behind it, you slowly start to allow the confidence and the self-worth to start growing. If this resonated with you, please subscribe because this is the conversation that I'm going to keep having on this channel. These types of conversations that get underneath the surface of career development. I hope you like this. I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.